So best practices for a monthly donor program, a lot of them are the same best practices for your overall fundraising program. But also think of a monthly donating program along a continuum. There's a mature monthly donor program, and then there's the ones that are just getting started, and then there's different steps along the way, right? So don't try to do it all at once because you heard that ASPCA has a great monthly donor program, and they do all of these different things. Get it started, do it well, be prepared to support it on the back end, and just acknowledge and steward your donors the right way so that that relationship grows. And then you can start adding the pieces like upgrading, additional giving, EFT conversion, which we'll talk about maybe later and stuff like that.
Yes.
I love EFT conversion.
Okay. Well, mine is pretty basic, just following up on what Tim just said. A couple of things. One is, even though I may not be at the top end of the monthly donor program, I consider myself towards the middle. But the donors are very concerned, once again, like he said, they still want to know where the money is going. They still want communication. And I do email and newsletter. The most important thing is that I also have, I don't know whether this is important for this conversation, an accountant doing the books. So I keep those pieces together as I try to develop what we're doing.
And I want Nancy to chime in because we kind of briefly talked about the importance of donor acknowledgement and recognition that kind of enhances what Dr. Cuffee was just speaking on.
For sure. One of the things I will say is, there's sort of two sets of monthly recurring donors. If you're in a larger organization, it's some guy who gave you his visa 18 months ago and just, it's on click. And that's great, and that's it's sort of a self-running thing. If you're looking to start one of these, I say start off really small and do a 3-month fund a need campaign. That's really the best way to give your donors, hey, we're looking to expand our education front. We are looking to put 16 more computers into, we're looking to save 13 more cats. Give them something small, and definitely do it during the downtime, where you're not asking for the big appeal, where your big campaign isn't coming up, or when you're trying to promote a special event, like May, if your gala is in October, for example. But in terms of acknowledgements, that's really your time to, and not worry about donor fatigue, but really get the most creative with your donor. So if I see a donor who's always given me a check, and for the first time went on email, boom, in 30 seconds, I'm my staff and I are like, this is a first time or an increased web donor, and we're gonna start responding that way. We want to start the conversation as best for them. So we had one individual who we sent out a blast email and said they liked a documentary that we had put together. So they gave us a donation for that, and we actually took one of our clients with our iPhone and had that client thank the donor, and we emailed it to them. So it's, again, I think somebody else said that today, you sort of meet your donors where they're at. If you have a donor that is an AOL address, this is not the person you're gonna be text messaging with. It's just not happening. But in a world where we're trying to move the 25 or even mid-level donor into a conversation, they have Bloomingdale's fatigue. They don't have you fatigue. Be creative with them and use the several channels that you have available to you. And acknowledgements is definitely the most creative way to do that.
I have a question for Robert, but I'm gonna get to this young lady who's standing up, but so that I don't forget the question. Nancy was making some good points, and we've talked about donors, placeholders, in a general kind of way, but I think it's also, Robert and I were talking right before we came in, and we were talking about how donors are getting so sophisticated, and it's not even a demographic that you're looking at. You're looking at this amazing kind of psychographic of what donors are like, right? So in 2010, I think anyone over the age of 66 barely kind of gave online, but now by 2014 they were giving at the same levels of people under 66. And so what I want Robert to do after this young lady's question is kind of talk about how even when how the optimization, how we're looking at these donors, and how we even set that up from a technological perspective, and how that we can't just assume that an older donor is not as technologically savvy anymore as a younger donor. My father is better on the iPad than me any day. I want to make sure we get your question as well.
So my question is sort of along the same lines, and some of you already sort of addressed it. It's once you've gotten a monthly donor engaged, how do you keep them engaged? And I was hoping for some more specific examples. And one of them, maybe it's like maybe there's something that's automatically, if it's like a digital online contribution, maybe there's something that could be automatically generated that, continues to sort of update them about a program, or is it more like a handwritten note? I'd just love to hear more examples about the ways that you keep recurring donors engaged in the long term.
That's a good question.
I mean, to that question specifically, celebrate your wins, right? Every time your organization has something that's really great that happens for you, that's a great time to acknowledge your donors, because you can say, hey, we just did this awesome thing, and we did it because you guys were involved, and you guys were our rock. You guys are what we depended on while we were doing all this awesome stuff. So that's one of my favorite ways to try to do donor acknowledgement. But
another thing that we do is, in any communication that we send them, we acknowledge that they are a monthly donor. But one of the things that we do is send them a special tax receipt at the beginning of the year that just kind of says, because you're not sending them an acknowledgement after every gift now. So it's, here's what you did, here's what we did with your money, and it's just reminding them that they're, even though it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, potentially to them, that their monthly gift does have an impact. And so we just use little pie charts and infographics and things to just show how the gift is being used, and as a reminder to them that they are in an exclusive group and a very loyal group to our organization.
I will also add, I think arts organizations do this probably with their eyes closed, and the opposite end is they don't realize how well they do it sometimes, is invite them to things sometimes that you may take for granted. I know my last job was an advocacy organization, and we didn't always have the kind of sexy of going to oh, here's some extra seats to the ballet. But if we had certain special, if we had certain special events that were, we always thought about our branding of everything I touched. How do we brand it? So I made sure we started a speaker series. I did it at the Bryant Park Hotel. Some people are like, you're doing it at the Bryant Park Hotel? Yeah. So, and a lot of those people who would come, we would give them special reserved seats, and they became donors. And those were, and I think Nancy was talking about this earlier, those people were those people who might click on here and here, there, and get on, but then we were able to start putting them into a certain set. And our program is one that was a 92-year organization that was still in development, because we had a lot of aging donors. So I found the more we kind of invited them to certain things, because a lot of times you're having all types of events that you take for granted. We had a ribbon cutting for the new building. We invited certain people there. So it was taking stock of Evelyn, who used to be is here, and so I would drive her crazy about, okay, what are we doing? Where's the calendar, and where can we put those types of things? Because I thought that it would also help our overall fundraising, and also touching our donor both in the traditional and the non-traditional way. And Tim and Nancy are also absolutely right. Making sure you get those letters of acknowledgement out almost within 5 to 7 days will make a lot of difference as well. So that's what's my 2 cents. I want to go back to Robert and what we were kind of framing earlier about how donors may be different, but are not always so different, especially as it comes to aging.
Yeah, it's funny because everybody sees that mobile is such a huge thing. Everybody's talking about emerging trends. And so, actually just last month, 55% of emails were opened on a mobile device. But just because it's on a mobile device doesn't mean that you should be making any assumptions about who's there. So I took a look at the last days of the month for December 31st, January 30th, and February 29th, because the end of the month are big fundraising days. In our analytics, the age demographic of 65 plus was the biggest age demographic that we saw, broken out by 10-year chunks. Like, that's astounding, right? Like, you should not be making any assumptions. And the thing is, people will be coming to you from, an iPad, from a phone, from whatever. And so you want to try to make that experience easy for them. Just because, they're using it doesn't mean that you should be putting barriers in front of them. So something that we do to try to make that easy, like, when you're typing in your address, like if you punch in your 5-digit zip code, the city and state, we're just going to look that up for you automatically. Or once you're typing in your credit card number, like everybody's phone has a camera on it. You can actually enable it so it can take a picture of your credit card and do that data entry for you if you're somebody who doesn't like typing. Even if you are typing, it's going to auto advance from the credit card number field into the expiration field, and just 4 digits, expiration, month, year, you're done instead of a couple select lists. Like, we sat there and literally counted the number of times you had to tap the screen in order to make it happen. So try to see what you can do to make that experience better, but also don't assume that anybody's coming with any sort of particular abilities necessarily.
Going back to, again, the audience and startup of a monthly donor program, I would love if the panelists could speak to kind of what organizational commitment needs to be overall, not just in the fundraising department. I don't work there anymore, so I can say this. I was totally blown away when I came in with my bright idea of like, we need to start a monthly donor program seriously. And we started it, made some investment, but the thing was figuring out who really owned that on top of all the other work that was already going on. And that really became a challenge for us organizationally. Once I kind of got everyone to invest in it, was really that ownership piece. And that was a great lesson for me as a CDO, to really understand the importance of that. Once you get that buy-in, who owns it? So if we all, I mean, if everyone can kind of talk about it from the various perspectives, because when they come to Robert and Tim, they may get mad at you as vendors and say, well, we didn't know this and we didn't know that. And for Dr. Cuffee and Nancy on the ground, what is the importance of ownership of this monthly donor program as it relates to staff and an organization?
So certainly development owns it from our perspective, but like a lot of other things in your organization, you have to build bridges with other departments, right? You don't want it to be a siloed program. So communications should be involved in understanding, because it's not the easiest thing to educate people about. Well, you give us your credit card, and then every month this happens. It's not a layaway program, right? So you want to have communication involved. The programs that are benefiting from it need to be involved, and certainly IT needs to be involved, because you need to make sure on the database side that you're getting gifts processed appropriately. But development needs to own it, and it really, if you can dedicate a person or half of a person's time to managing that program, it's an important enough program. It saves you a lot of money and time and resources on retention efforts, on finding new donors, and it's good for cash flow.
Nancy?
Sure. That's a very interesting question, and for those of us who can work outside of the box and are working outside of the box, because we're not institutionalized to the extent of many of the organizations or nonprofits that are represented here. One thing I try to do is have a conference every 2 years, depending on, funding and all of that. That conference, one, is to bring again and again back those women that are loyal to this idea of the National Clergy and Lay Women Humanitarian Foundation who want to partake of the products, which is the programming that happens during the conference. So in that sense, if I'm able to get them to come back, we do a legacy series where we give out awards to those women who have risen to the top. All of them have risen to the top. But anyway, you pick some and you give an award to, those different things maintain their loyalty to come back again and again, and I don't have the problem with lots of emails and lots of mailing because we don't have, quote unquote, a staff. I'm basically the non-paid staff and happy about it. And so anyway, but one of the exciting things that I'm thinking of, I have to work with a duality in that, yes, I want those givers who give monthly to maintain loyalty to the organization, but also I am very interested in partnering with high and low profile personalities where I can also get that influx of money as well to be able to do some of the program objectives that's part of the mission statement of the organization. Now, I haven't done it yet, but I am moving in that direction. And partly having a stability, demonstrating stability, having a book, having conferences, and having different profile people who can validate what you've been doing helps in my move towards partnering with other high-profile people who do have money and would like to make a donation to my organization.
Okay. Nancy?
Just briefly, I feel it's a great project to give to your emerging development staff. If you're working for a nonprofit that doesn't have this glossy communications team, and you yourself are de facto communications and development, I think this is a great time to really teach and cultivate your more mid-level, junior-level development team, because it's a great practice for them. They're not talking to your major donor one-on-one, but they're the heartbeat and the tap to the things that you may not know that's going on in the city, in events, in art, in social media, and give them that project of, you're gonna manage this portfolio. And what's great about doing monthly campaigns, and I say if you're a startup, do one this summer, do it for 3 months, give them great stats, clear identifiable goals as to which you want them to donate monthly, and give it to a more thirsty development person who will have some more outside ideas and aren't funneled into the foundation major gifts world. And from my experience, that's where we saw the greatest bounce. That's where we saw the conversation, because it's a closed microphone to basically the masses. And in my experience, we've had some great feedback from it. Even from a brand raising standpoint, even I used to give, $25, but I'd really like to volunteer. You'll get that kind of feedback, or get some questions that maybe you wouldn't even get from a donor at that level. So I think it's important to really cultivate and utilize every single person on that development team.
Are there any, sorry. Hi.
Hi. So I have a question. Coming from a small shop, there's always weary about, so we have probably about 4,000 emails, and our communications and development team are like, try not to talk to them so much. We don't want to anger them or piss them off, and then we are gonna have, all these opt-outs. What can you say about, because you're talking about testing and really starting it up, and are there, don't definitely do that. You talk about best practices, how about the opposite? What should you not definitely do to avoid a lot of opt-outs, or,
In 30 seconds, you have to answer this, because I'm getting that Apollo thing.